From alcohol overuse to moderate use, no more shame and blame. Is your own alcohol use on your mind a lot? Since almost everyone who enjoys alcohol has likely had a binge, how do we manage that? How do we know how much is too much? And how do we regain control when we think we've lost it? In this special 12-part series, Confidence Coach Susan Axelrod interviews alcohol moderation expert Dr. Michele Perron. This series begins with the question, why are we having this conversation now? And it wraps up with a burning question for you to consider. For your own alcohol use practice, what will your path be? This special series is sponsored by Axelrod Confidence Coaching. Hello, friends. Wow. And what a special series this is. Today is episode 9. But if you haven't listened to our other episodes, I implore you, I urge you, I encourage you to go back and do yourself a very big favor and listen from the beginning. Each episode indeed is filled with such important, life-changing information, tools, tips, strategies, but all together, it could really truly be life-saving. So in each episode, our special guest offers a challenge. Last week's challenge was this: observe others. Go to a party or an event or a function, and you do not drink, but rather observe others and notice their alcohol use. And what is it that you notice? So I'm going to bring Michele on. Hi, Michele. Good to see you.
Hi, good to see you.
That was a very interesting challenge.
I love that one.
Yeah. And I remember, of course, I've been alcohol free for almost 2.5 years now. But I remember when I went alcohol free by choice to be an ally. And I remember what I noticed about how much overuse there is out there.
Yes, and that's the aha moment for many people when they realize, they're at what they consider an ordinary event or function or gathering or whatever, and they realize that they're having a bigger party than everyone else. And that is so important. And that's so eye-opening for most people. And because of that eye-opening experience, it can have a really big impact on their use.
So two different things. One is what you're noticing about how much others might be drinking. And two is what you just said, which is how you're noticing that you might be drinking more normally than other people. And that's the thing that can have a really big impact on you, right?
Yeah, it's either it's one of those two things. Someone will say that could be me going up to the bar that many times, or it could be, oh my gosh, I usually have 8 drinks and everyone else is actually having 2, and I never noticed that before. I thought everyone was drinking as much as I was drinking.
Well, anyone who knows me now and follows me anywhere you can follow me will hear me say notice.
No.
They will hear me use the word notice. Often I'm saying notice what you feel, but today we're saying notice what's happening. Notice your own practices and notice what's going on around you. Mm-hmm. So today we're continuing the discussion about health and your alcohol use in moderation. And today we're going to hear from you about the Sinclair Method. So let's go.
So it wasn't until I was in practice for 8 years as an alcohol and drug counselor that I finally learned about this miracle change called Naltrexone. And so it's a medication that's used in a way that's not on the label. And so let me tell you a little bit about Naltrexone, which sort of blew me away. It was discovered or developed in 1963, and it sat on a shelf and was sold. The patent was sold. And in 1984, they started to do some research on it. And they discovered that it wasn't as effective for heroin treatment or opioid addiction as methadone. And so they shelved it. They didn't use it. And there it sat until a few years later, Dr. David Sinclair said, let's take a second look at this. It's not as effective for uh, heroin addiction or opioid, like prescription medication, that maybe it will be good for another drug like alcohol, which affects the endorphin receptors or the opioid receptors in the brain. So he started to look at it, and he started to look at cravings and decided he would try it because it had a short burn off period. In other words, at that time, they were estimating about 6 hours that the naltrexone, once you take it, would stay on your receptors. And then after 6 hours, it would sort of decrease over time and not be as effective. So they thought the short-lived life was probably why it wasn't working so well with heroin or opioids. So he decided to try that. And his theory was, if I give it closer to when they start drinking, that maybe this will work better. So he did a lot of testing, over 100 studies in Europe on this, and discovered that if you take this medication an hour to an hour and a half before your first drink, it will dissolve, get into your blood, and get to your brain. And it will actually protect your receptors from the alcohol that enters your brain. So I like to put it this way to make it memorable. It's like putting a condom on your receptors in your brain, so you don't have unprotected drinking. Right? Easy way to remember.
Right.
And so then you just drink as normal. And what happens is you don't get the big buzz. It's still pleasant to drink, but you don't get the big buzz, and you're not as likely to continue drinking to excess. So a lot of people will take it, and it's, which is really wild, it's effective for 86% of people who use it, and it's 78% effective. So that means of all the people who try it and tolerate it well, because it's a very broad, full-on antagonist, we call it. So it's non-addictive. It has very few, if any, side effects. And the only reason why the other 15% can't take it is that they don't tolerate it. But there are other medications that will do the same thing. But this one is a really good medication because it's non-addictive. You don't take it forever. You take it just before you drink. And it reduces how much you drink in what feels like a very natural way. And that has been a game changer in my practice. That led to the development of a bigger program that had 10 groups of 10 people. And we probably had put 500 people through that in the 8 years that I ran that program. I trained a bunch of counselors to work it. And it was really a good program until the company merged with another company. And the company that was taking over our company was more traditional and wanted to go for abstinence-based only treatment. So they let myself and 100 clients go and find something else to do. Wow. So it was a bit devastating for me at the time, but also it broadened my horizon in terms of what was happening out there, who was doing it, how we were doing it, and allowed me to then evolve the rest of my practice since then. And so this drug is a game changer for just about everyone who tries it.
So the medication is called naltrexone.
Yes, ma'am.
Naltrexone, Naltrexone. And you take it shortly before, an hour and a half before you start drinking. Mm-hmm. And then, just for me to be clear, it reduces, when you are taking it, it reduces the craving. And so you might drink 3 drinks instead of 6 or 8.
So it does not reduce the craving. It reduces alcohol's effect on your brain.
It reduces alcohol's effect on you.
Yes. So you don't get that spike, that buzz that you normally would get if you didn't take it. So
what is the connection between getting that buzz and the over drinking? I really, really, really want to parse this to make sure I understand it. What is the connection? It reduces the effect that alcohol has on you, like the condom that you mentioned, protecting the brain. And then, but what is it that stops you from drinking 8
more.
drinks.
Yes. So when we drink alcohol normally without any sort of, medication like we're talking about, it gets into your bloodstream, and it's a slower process. Early on, when you're younger, your body can process more alcohol more quickly. But as we age, the liver takes more time, and you can build up more alcohol in your bloodstream, and then you get intoxicated. So what's happening in your brain at that point is that alcohol, it gets into your brain, and it starts to occupy the receptors that are opioid receptors. So the receptors that will kill pain, right? So when you're intoxicated, you don't feel a lot of pain, especially on your extremities. So people can get cut, break their arm or leg, and they're not going to be in a lot of pain, right? Because they're numb that way. And secondarily, then it will stimulate dopamine. So your initial response when you get buzzed, what people talk about, right? You feel this relief. And then if you're out, you're going to get a surge of energy. So you'll have what's called a glutamate surge in addition to a dopamine surge. So then now I'm going to go out and have fun, and I'm going to skateboard on a railing, and I'm going to do the crazy things that we do, or dance, think I'm a great dancer from the inside, and from the outside, people are wondering what you're up to on the dance floor, sort of thing. So
Right.
that energetic thing. So that then stimulates the reward center. So once the reward, so what happens in the brain is that in the reward center, we call that the amygdala. That is your green light in the brain that says, yes, do this more, do this more. And it captures salient events, important events. That is a primitive response. When our brain sees something that's highly rewarding, it captures it and says, this is something we need to do again. Absolutely. Right? And so it opens up the glutamate pathway, which is a green light to just like, woohoo, let's go do this as much as possible. And so we'll continue drinking because the reward is very high. Initially, because if we've never had a drink before, we have a lot of endorphins and we have a lot of dopamine. So that first surge of intoxication is very potent and highly rewarding, and we will return to that over and over and over. And that's true of any drug of abuse. As it stimulates different parts of the brain, in the anterior prefrontal cortex, there's a spot up behind your eyes in the center of your brain that is the hotbed of reward. And so your brain will really, really like that. And with the high reward, you'll want to repeat that. So when you drink frequently and in high volumes, you're stimulating that reward, you're reinforcing that reward, making it far more likely for you to want to do it again. The sad thing is, over time, we get tolerant. We develop a tolerance to the stimulus that's creating that, to alcohol. So we have to drink more to feel as intoxicated. The more we drink, the more we use up those brain neurotransmitters, the more frequently we do it. And at some point, our tolerance gets so high that now when we don't drink, we don't feel good. So many people have to drink to feel normal because they have so depleted their natural neurotransmitters, having used them up through the process of drinking more frequently and more volume. So naltrexone gets in there, like throwing a wrench in the machine. It covers up the initial reward response, and nature, as you don't reinforce the behavior, nature will naturally pull back, and your tolerance will go down, and you'll slowly then come off of the substance, because you won't find it be as rewarding. It'll be kind of pointless to drink because you're not getting drunk anymore.
Okay, so let's pause here. This is very science-y.
Yeah.
And I love science, and I tune into science. And for fun, I will listen to a 3.5-hour podcast on neuroscience. So it's fun for me. And I've been taking my notes as I do my prolific notes, and also tuning in to listen to what you're saying. When you said the first surge of intoxication is very rewarding, and your brain will capture that and want to repeat this, that seems to be what you're going for. Over time, your tolerance rises or raises,
Mm-hmm.
and it takes more alcohol to get there.
Yes.
In this case, to get there, to have that surge,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're drinking more and more to try to reenact that brain thing that happens
Mm-hmm.
from the early experience. Now, a few things. Number one, we've learned from you over many episodes we've discussed. This is very different when you're younger, and when as you age, things change significantly, and so you might. This is something to tune into for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And so, number two, I wanted to point out that, gosh, it feels like there's many people who may have had only one experience acting like an idiot when you're wasted, right? Out on the dance floor, as you said, or in another episode, we talked about picking that argument, or somebody else fell down and scared the spouse or whatever. Most, I guess I might say most people maybe have had that experience once or twice, but also we're speaking to people who are honestly reflecting for themselves that, as we said in the last episode, yeah, it's familiar to me for my partner or spouse or child or someone to tell me, how could you not remember that? I know that I'm not remembering things, and so on and so forth. And then you may act in a certain way, and you've indicated many times in many episodes you could hurt yourself. For example, you mentioned dancing kind of like a crazy person out on the dance floor. But if you're inebriated in the way that we're talking about, you could be dancing in the middle of a street where there are cars, and your child could be watching you in terror, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So the medication, now it turns out, now I'm going back a little bit, the reason it sat on the shelf, it sounds like, is because it didn't work for that treatment, that singular treatment that they were looking for, which was heroin in those days, in the 60s, before the opioid epidemic of our more recent years. And then later they started doing more research, and then they realized it had a different use. Many medications that happens with.
Yes.
That it's come out as one way and now another. And then, sorry, I'm repeating all of this because this is
useful.
This is useful. And then you're working with 10 groups of 10 people each, who are having good experiences for the most part. It's 78% effective.
Mm-hmm. There's no talk therapy that comes close to that.
There's no talk therapy that comes close to that. And it's effective for, I wrote down approximately 68% of the people, or 60 some percent.
86.
Oh, 86. I got that backwards.
So most people can take it.
Most people can take it. And and then the one last point I wanted to make that you shared with us is that it doesn't stay in your system for a long time. 6 hours. It has a 6 hour shelf,
depending on your metabolism. If you're younger, maybe shorter, but if you're older, maybe longer.
Yeah. Okay, but it doesn't stay in your system for days on end.
Correct.
So this is a big story. It's a very sciencey story. I wanna acknowledge that. I wonder if you have any examples of people who have used it and benefited from it.
Yeah, I have lots of examples. I want to bring up two things first. In the U.S., naltrexone is prescribed on label. Take it every day in the morning. Okay. Another way off label is take it only on the days you drink, an hour to an hour and a half before you drink, which is the Sinclair Method. Now, Claudia Christian, an actress in Hollywood, she did a TED Talk, and it's How I Quit Drinking Alcohol. She went to Congress to lobby for changing the insert on the package so doctors would all know to prescribe it the secondary way because it's more effective and it works faster. And people don't have to quit drinking all at once and go through dangerous detox, especially when we're older. You can have a seizure, you can have secondary effects. And we don't improve brain neurotransmitters in regular traditional medicine either. So it becomes a much more dangerous proposition to quit cold turkey, go and get some other addictive drugs to help you get through the critical period. And then you may end up doing that over and over and over again, like a revolving door, which is
cycle.
Yeah. Whereas if we do the Sinclair method, many times people come to me and they're on a daily dose. Now, I'm not a physician and I tell them to talk to their doctor, but that there is another way they could try if they want to. I send them to forums. I have them in my group, and I certainly do a lot of education to help them try taking it an hour to an hour and a half before they drink rather than in the morning. Because if you're not a morning drinker and it's burning off your receptors in 6 hours, by the time your witching hour comes, you're not protected and you're going to drink as usual and you're not going to see anything.
And then it's going to appear as if it didn't work.
Yeah. Until you get a dose that's been established, and that takes some time. But the downside of taking naltrexone every day, if you're not drinking, because if you're drinking every day, you won't, if you take naltrexone every day, eventually you will not be drinking every day if you're taking it at your witching hour. But if you don't take it at your witching hour, I find that about at 3 to 4 months, people no longer take it because they feel emotionally flat. And that flatlining is an extension of what we call anhedonia, which is a brain state after you get off of alcohol or any drug where you feel flat, your emotions are very low, and that can be accounted for by low brain neurotransmitters. And so that's problematic. There is a way to restore your brain neurotransmitters much more quickly, but it's not generally accepted in mainstream medical practice. But I believe in amino acid therapy because not only am I certified in it, but I've seen it work miracles with people. So a targeted amino acid recommendation along with your targeted naltrexone can really get you much farther than you expected, much more quickly. So that combination, I would have to say, is almost the perfect storm to help people change in a few days or a few weeks instead of months, and instead of relapse, and instead of feeling sick all the time and feeling brain fog. The aminos can really make a difference.
Okay, so again, the medication of how you take it, it's such a commentary on, well, that doesn't work. That didn't work for me. Mm-hmm. Well, if you're taking it in the morning, it has a 6, 7, 8 hour shelf life, and your drinking hour is after you get home from work, down in the basement, in front of the TV, secret late night vodka drinking, or finishing off the bottle of wine starting at 7 p.m.
Yes.
Then that would be an indicator that it wouldn't be working for you, but because you're not using it in the way that it could work for you. Yeah. Alternatively, as soon as you use the term off-label, now we have, that's off-label. And that's why it's important that we share stories. We're so, groomed to believe if it's off-label, it's bad for us. If it's off-label, it's not good for us. We are groomed and trained by the Western establishment, which I go to the doctor when I need. But if we're not really thinking people, then we're going to make assumptions. Well, I wouldn't do that. Yeah. But your experience and expertise working with hundreds of people has shown alternatives.
Yeah. Not only, it's just not me, it's me and decades of research, and like all of Europe, this is a norm there, because David Sinclair had to go to Finland to finish his research because it was so anti-AA policy. They didn't want it to get out in the US. So there's even a difference between medicine elsewhere outside of the United States.
Right. And any thinking person knows that. We have differences on the food labels and all kinds of things in Europe.
So
So,
some examples you asked for.
yeah.
Is it, yeah. Okay, so I had a psychiatrist. And of course, psychiatrists are medical doctors with additional training on top of that, right? And so I assumed from the place I was sitting that this person was going to know a lot more than I know about this. And he was coming to my group, and he was very flat, and he didn't speak too much. But when he did, we all enjoyed his input because he was very smart. And one day, he had been coming for quite a while, and we were talking about the TSM method. And one day he said, "Do you mean to say I don't need to take this pill every morning?" And I said, "No, you can start taking it like when you come home from work, at least an hour to an hour and a half before you take a glass of wine." He said, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah, give it a try." So he did. The following he didn't come the next week. The following week he came, and he was so animated. I had to pull him aside and asked him if he was drinking. He said, "No." He said, "This is who I am without the naltrexone every day." He was fun loving. He was upbeat. He was encouraging. He seemed like he was 20 years younger. And he said, my wife said, "This is my husband back again."
So let's be clear. What's astonishing about this story is a psychiatrist is a doctor who went to medical school, who is able to prescribe, who is one of the people we go to for prescription medication for anxiety or depression or whatever. He's a human being. He got consumed in alcohol overuse, apparently, obviously, or he wouldn't have been at your group. And he broke through his ego and said, "I need help." He got himself to your group. And then eventually he kind of came to and said, "Wait a second, are you telling me I don't need to take this every day? And you're not a, MD, you're a PhD, of course, but you're not a medical doctor." And then you said, "This is the research, this is the experience." And so he made his own decision to try it and came back. And then I have sobs inside me. I'm containing, this is who I am. You said, have you been drinking? Because you saw him, he was so animated, that surge that we talked about, right? Oh, that surge. And he said, "No, this is who I am." Wow.
He had remarried a younger wife, and so she was not happy with his drinking, of course, and so he was doing something proactive to help. But he was just very, very serious when I met him, and then when he changed so much. He was so friendly and warm and engaging and talkative, and it's like, "Whoa, you've been drinking?" He said, "No."
Wow, this is who I am.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I had another lady. She had some twins, and they were young teenagers, and she was living in Texas. And even her father was a physician, but she didn't want to go to him for a prescription, right? So she was able to get a prescription online, and there are lots of providers of naltrexone online. It was her birthday coming up, and so I said, "For your birthday, go ahead and give yourself a gift. Take the naltrexone on your birthday and go out and do your girls' night out like she wanted to do, and normally, where they would, I guess in Texas they do everything big. So in general, going out for a girls' night means they're going to have as much wine as they want, and usually ends up with an Uber ride home and a big headache the next day. But she decided to take this naltrexone. So she went out, took it, and she said, "I had 2 glasses of wine and I didn't want any more. My birthday was great. I had a beautiful dinner. We had, they brought us dessert afterwards. All my friends were having a good time." But she said, "I was able to go home and I got up the next day and I felt fine." And she's like, "What is going on here?" Pretty soon her friends started asking, "What are you doing?" Because the first time she took the pill, she had a dramatic experience. And so she stayed with it. And within a month, she was a different person. Her friends all got on the medication as well because they couldn't believe how well she did and what a big impact it had. And
These
so,
would be moms who drink wine kind of thing.
yep, moms who drink wine and they have the girls' night out to get away from the men and
Yeah.
all that sort of thing. And it made such a dramatic difference that her friends all asked her what she was doing. They couldn't believe it. Or everyone was proud of her because she seemed to have gotten it all back together. And her husband was happier and her boys were happier and she was happier. And it was just a dramatic, a dramatic turn. Not everybody has that big a deal right away, but many people do.
I just want to say right at the beginning, I encouraged people, I hope you will go back and listen to all the episodes, because along the way, we've learned from Michele things like you can have a goal for your drinking. So if we apply all these things that we've been learning from you, it's my birthday, we're doing a Texas style with girls' night out, and we're going to go out and drink big or whatever. If you ask yourself, what is my goal? Well, my goal for a peak end experience, right? PEAK and END experience is to have fun on my birthday. Let's do it. Let's get it. And rock out. And then if you
remember it while it's happening.
And remember it. That might also be a goal that you have. And then if you go to another tool and challenge that you've shared with us, which is let's plan my drinking that night. It's like, I work with young people. I talk about planning sex because we can't, we're tired and spontaneous sex in your middle age. No, like let's still do it, but let's plan it. That's sort of the same way. Oh, I have to plan my drinking. Yeah, let's plan it. You're going out with your friends, Uber is driving anyway. And so how many drinks do you think you want to have? Well, I'll have one there, maybe we'll pregame and while we preload, while we eat protein, right? That's what we learned in the last episode. And then we'll get there and I'll have another drink. And then a little bit later in the evening, I'll have another one. So it feels like 3 is not too many when you're going to have your birthday and so on and so forth. Then, that's not 6 or 8 or whatever. And so that's called planning your drinking with the intention of having a peak end experience. So you get what I'm doing here, Michele? I mean, this is
putting it all together so that people have a veritable smorgasbord of things to pick from to be successful. So I'm in, each episode we're talking about individual things that you can choose from. You have to do it all. But if you pick a few that work for you, you're going to get the kind of successful results that you're looking for. And not everyone's the same, which is why I offer so many different ideas, because everyone has a different combination.
I mean, in this case, you only have a birthday once, but if somebody else, one of the other girlfriends in Texas is having a birthday and you use last week's challenge and you go like, you know what, this time I'm going to go, but I'm not going to drink. I'm going to observe. Why would we do that? Because I want to be better. I want to live a good, healthy life. I want my kids to, be happy with me, my spouse to be happy with me, etc. And then you go and then you observe, wait a second. I thought everyone was getting so wasted they didn't remember, but it turns out that was just me. Or the other way that I said, wow, I can't believe how much everyone is drinking. Either way, you're really observing what's happening on those girls' nights out. And, you said this early on in our conversation about the wine, the women who drink wine. In one of those earlier episodes, you said that or was it you or did I hear it on another podcast? I heard it on another podcast with a neuroscientist talking about addiction. And he said the wine industry went after women because women didn't drink like men. Mm-hmm. And they started marketing to women. That's what that was in another thing. Yeah. They started marketing to women to drink wine. And that then they had success. And that's one of the reasons women who whine.
Yeah. And also it increased, the alcohol-related physical diseases that occur alongside of drinking. It amplified up cardiac issues with women. It amplified obesity, and women were not dying from heart attacks as frequently as men until they started drinking like men. And so that was
Right.
a big thing that changed. It followed like the graphs kind of follow one another. So
Right.
increased wine sales to women and increased,
Oh my gosh. This is like it's like so big what's happening here. It's so big. Okay. So we have two examples. I want more, but before we do that, I now want to really go back and talk about the amino acid therapy, the combination that you're talking about, and some detail there so that we can understand what that is about.
Yeah. So while you're drinking, and if you're drinking frequently or in high volume, even if you're a weekend warrior, what happens is the molecules that are neurotransmitters are not simple little one molecule deals. They are branched chain polypeptides or proteins is what they're called. And they're, if you think of them spatially, kind of like a ribbon that's twisted and long, and it would like be made out of a glass tube. So it's very fragile. And if it bumps around, it will break. And if it breaks, it's no good. And your white blood cells have to come along, clean up the mess, and reuse what it can and get rid of what it can't reuse. And so when alcohol comes along and there's a surge of endorphins and dopamine and glutamate, right? After the surge, and you get done drinking and you go home and you pass out in your bed, then your whole body has to have a cleanup crew. And your liver is cranking like wild to break down the alcohol into its components so you can excrete them. But up in your brain, it's cleaning up all of the neurotransmitters that have been floating around and not being able to lock into a receptor because alcohol has been in the way. So they're floating around, hitting each other, and now it's like think of it as a messy floor. And so white blood cells have to come along like Pac-Man and clean all that up. So when it does that, it depletes those neurotransmitters. If they are in good condition, they will be vacuumed back up into the nerve ending because your brain is a natural recycler and it likes to have good chemicals that it reuses as much as it can. But when you plug a receptor with alcohol, what happens is that stimulus to release the endorphins, right? Does the endorphins, when they do get released, don't get reabsorbed because it's like putting a tennis ball in your vacuum. It's not going to suck those neurotransmitters back in and not be able to recycle. So over time, you deplete your neurotransmitters because they're not being reused and put back in their protective nerves that they would usually do. And so that's the other reason why the first buzz is always the best feeling. And then you chase trying to feel as buzzed the rest of the night. And over time, it takes you longer and more alcohol to get to that level that you find euphoric because you start depleting your brain neurotransmitters. So they're not available to make you feel super relaxed, super happy, and super energetic to go do what you're going to do. So that there is a way to eliminate and reduce the effect of having low neurotransmitters. Because if you're not feeling, if you're feeling a lot of anxiety, you're feeling low self-confidence, you're feeling tired, you're feeling tearful, you're feeling lack of focus and lack of energy, like all those things are actually a decrease in your brain's neurotransmitters. But in order to replete them or restore them, we have to eat the building blocks that make them. So that comes to diet, which is why I'm such a proponent of the eat protein first rule. It's the easiest way to do that. But sometimes, for whatever reasons, your body might not be as an efficient processor as it used to be, or you're not eating enough of protein or the right kinds of protein. So in the practice of nutrition and amino acid therapy, you can actually target which neurotransmitters are low, and you can give a specific amino acid to help people feel more confident, feel less anxious, sleep better, not feel so tearful, feel less physical pain, feel more content, be more focused. All of those things have different amino acids. So you can you can start to take a specific amino acid that will help your brain function better. You can skip the brain fog. You can skip the time it takes. That's why recovery in an abstinence-based program takes so long, because it takes a long time to eat, a year or more, literally a year or more, to eat a normal American diet and finally get your brain to some place. And many times people relapse in the consequential year. The rate is very
Sets it
high.
back.
Yep, to go back to drinking or relapse because of the eroded and reduced amount of neurotransmitters. So once we supplement those and get your brain the fuel it needs to make those neurotransmitters, it knows exactly what to do. It absorbs them as quickly as possible and makes you feel better, sometimes within 20 minutes. And other times it might take a day or two, but you can feel a lot better, a lot faster.
So let me, we got sciency again. Before I ask my question, I want to say to anybody who is watching or listening to this, come back in here, tune in, replay this. And the way I'm going to replay it, which I listened to our episodes multiple times, the way I'm going to replay what we've just gone over is on actually a slower volume. Normally I listen to podcasts at 2 times because my brain processing is fast and I'm all into it. I'm like with it, like, let's go. I'm learning. But this time with all this sciencey stuff that you're talking about, I'm actually going to slow down the speed a tiny bit, just so it's normal, but so I can really listen, hear, process, and integrate what you're sharing with us. Okay, so now I just want to go to the immunotherapy. You just said that you can target which amino acid is low. I assume this is what amino acid therapy is. How do you identify which amino acid is low?
Yeah, there is a simple test. It's a 1-page test where you rate symptoms, and symptoms can be attributed to certain neurotransmitters in the brain. And so there are 4 big ones, which would be serotonin, GABA, dopamine, and endorphins.
Okay.
And so those 4 are your big 4 that do most of the heavy lifting in your brain. And so based on symptoms, it will indicate which aminos would best serve you to feel better. And that was developed in the 80s. And there's a book called The Mood Cure by Julia Ross.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I think of her as the godmother of amino acid therapy. So.
Okay, good. Okay, so that's pretty easy. That's a test that you can take for yourself, and you rate your symptoms, and then based on the response to your test, it could be analyzed that where you need to target certain amino acids. What are the amino acids again? Did I miss that? Like, what are these?
Yep, they're just the basic building blocks of protein. And so they come from what we call peptides, right? Peptides are made of groups of amino acids. And that's why they come in on proteins, because they are the components of protein.
So based on the other episode where we talked about program, I'd have to look at my notes to remember. I think that was 2 episodes ago. That's why if you preload with proteins, what's preloading? Preloading is in place of pre-gaming. So instead of drinking to pre-game, you can enhance your life experience by preloading with some proteins. We talked about dairy and eggs and meat and, like ground turkey and cottage cheese and these kinds of things. And that's preloading. And then you're going to hit these things no matter which of your symptoms gets affected. If you enhance your protein intake on a regular basis, you're enhancing your system.
Yes. However, like I said, all digestive systems are not exactly the same. So if you have a good and efficient digestive system, you'll do fine. But as we age, we start to have difficulty breaking down food. So we aren't able to absorb those proteins that we eat. For example, when you eat an egg, you think, oh, there's 6 grams of protein. But in reality, you're only able to absorb about 48% of the protein in that egg. So you're not getting 100% of the protein from that egg. So they have developed supplements that are specific amino acids like L-tryptophan, L-tyrosine, GABA, L-theanine. Like there are lots of different aminos. But to know how to use them, how much and when, is and what the side effects might be, because some of them interact with different medications, or if you have certain like cancers, or if you are PKU sensitive, or certain things have to be counter checked if there's any interaction between them. So you have to be careful when recommending supplements, because you don't want to make anyone sick and you don't want to get sick. So there's a little nuance to learning how to do that. The book, The Mood Cure, does explain that, and it does have the test in it. But that's one of the services I provide for clients is I will give them that test, and then we will discuss together what the best course of action is. And I also ask if they're on any other medications, if they are any on special diets, if they have any ongoing like high blood pressure or heart issues or allergies of any kind, so that I can make sure that I will recommend doses and substances that are not going to cause you any kind of harm whatsoever. So there's a little nuance, and that's the training that I went through. So after my PhD, I had another 1.5 years of training to know more about that.
It's one of the things my father did. He was a chemist, and he did study supplements, and he knew a lot about supplements, and he took a lot of supplements, and he had trusted sources, and he was a trusted person. I don't take supplements, and I'm nervous about taking supplements. I know a lot about supplements, but I don't really know what I need for what. And but so this is really interesting information for sure. I wrote down supplements can offset nutrition loss.
Yeah.
So when you're eating and you think you're getting 6 grams of protein in an egg, but you're only absorbing 48% of that, 3 grams.
Yeah.
3 grams, not 6 grams, then you're off. And that's where supplements can come in. If you go to a trusted source of verifiable information to get supplements, lots of Chinese medicine practitioners will offer supplements, or there's lots of trusted sources that you want to vet and verify. Mm-hmm. So
there are some good brands on Amazon too, that I was told through my education are safe and good. So they are accessible, and they do what they say they do. You have to know which brands to avoid, and typically anything in your local drugstore or Walmart probably not got in it what it says.
Oh, okay. So there is more work to do, my friends.
Yes.
We didn't come here to say there would be no work. What we came here to say is you can live a good life understanding all these practices, strategies, and tools to support your body and your brain and your life experience in connection with everything that you do, and most especially in connection with your loved ones. Really, if your loved ones are talking to you about drinking, they're asking you about it, there's no discussion about alcohol if there's no problem with alcohol. If there's discussion about alcohol, it's possible at least that there's a problem with alcohol. Would you say that's a fair statement or not?
Yes, that's very fair. And I love that statement. If it's a topic of conversation, then where there's smoke, there's fire, right?
Yeah, exactly. Let's for a second talk about fish oil, multivitamins, B3, and the mesh.
Yes.
Challenge.
So as Americans, with the food that's available to us, most of us are not getting the nutrients, or what we call, aside from the proteins, the amino acids, if you're taking those, but the cofactors, which are the vitamins and minerals, because we are mineral depleted, this is why you see the rise of all the electrolyte drinks, providing electrolytes and minerals to your diet. It's really important that you pay attention to minerals because your bones and your teeth and your hair, right? It's all built out of minerals, and they're really important. And so sometimes people have a concurrent issue. So if you look at your fingernails and you have little white spots on your fingernails, that could be an indication that you're low in zinc. And so that might be something you look into. You can, follow up online or with your doctor on that. The other thing is fish oil, omega-3 fatty acids. Now, your brain is 68% fat, and you need good, and fats go rancid. So you have to, as they do that, even in the human body at our temperature, we have to replace them. So that means we need to eat fat to replace the fats that are getting old in our head, right, in our bodies. It's not just the fat on my thigh, but it's my head. If someone calls you a fat head, like Dr. Amen says, that's a compliment, right? So essential fatty acids that include omega-3, 6, and 9, but 6 and 9 your body can produce, so we have to focus on the 3s. And you can get that from fish oil, but you want to get a fish oil that's from Antarctica or the Arctic. It can be krill oil even, but you want to get fresh, cold fish. And often even supplements are pretty old by the time they get to you. So one of the best things you can do is start consuming fish. Wild caught, healthy salmon or sardines are really a powerhouse. Like it's like eating, when you eat a tin of sardines, it's more like multivitamins because they do have the calcium and the magnesium and the protein and the omega-3s that you really need. Or you can even purchase cod liver oil or cod livers in a tin in their own oil, which are also quite good, little salt on a cracker. So I will consume sardines or actually cod liver at least 2 or 3 times a week as a snack, little hot sauce on there. They're good, right? And so I think it's really important that people eat fish. Now, in ancient times, people who lived near coastal waters ate more fish and they were healthier and they also had more brain capacity. They were thinkers, they were developers, think ancient Rome and how they were a seafaring group of people who went really far for ancient times. Like now we're finding they went even farther than we ever thought. Anyway, so it's important that if you live inland that you make it a habit to consume fish. And some people don't like fish, so like anything, it's a learned thing. If you don't care for fish, you can find mild fishes, or you can take the supplements if you want to take the supplements. But always look for Antarctic from cold, clean, fresh sources. Nordic Naturals is a decent brand. Ocean Blue is a decent brand. But you're always better to go closer to nature, which is why sardines and cod livers are good.
Right. Also, unfortunately, everything healthy for you is expensive.
Salmon,
And so everything,
wild
even fish is expensive. So it's important to prioritize health. That's just what we have to do.
And sardines are relatively inexpensive too.
Yes.
So that's something that you could incorporate relatively easily.
So the thing about sardines is that having them in a can in your cabinet uneaten does not help you.
No.
So take them out of your cabinet, snap open the can and eat them. Let's get to this week's challenge.
Yeah. So this week's challenge, I want you to check your energy throughout the day. And you're going to practice move, eat, sleep, and hydrate, right? Mesh remember, I got to mesh this week. So I've got to move around. And I say move, we can say exercise, but really movement. Up and down your own stairs in your own house, walking around the block, especially now in the cold. It's really good if you spend 5 to 10 minutes out there or longer. Don't get frostbitten, but cold exposure like that helps you to make brown fat, which keeps you alive and keeps you well. And so movement of any kind outside is best. If you can, eat. Pay attention to that protein. It's really important. Every 3 hours, you should have 20 to 30 grams of protein for a woman, 30 to 40 for a man. The rule of thumb is to eat 1 gram of protein for every pound of body weight that you have, but your ideal body weight. So if you need to lose 30 pounds, aim for that 30 pound less lighter body, right? So that's, you have to eat. If you're not eating enough, I meet more of my clients who are not succeeding because they're not eating. They'll wake up and they won't eat till 2 in the afternoon. They'll have 2 pots of coffee. I met a lady in her 60s. She was retired professional. She was eating Doritos and Coca-Cola for breakfast. Like,
Yeah.
like I wanted to say, did you lose your mind? Because that's not, you wouldn't let your children do that in high school. You're not going to do that yourself.
Right, but the truth is she did lose her mind a little bit at a time. It disintegrated and disintegrated until she was just eating Doritos and some whatever it was for soda for breakfast.
Yeah.
And that really is true. And to anybody who's listening to this or watching this, we want to ask you, do you still, have your own mind? Are you still in good control of your mind? So I love the acronym MESH. Move. I, of course, talk about moving, and I, of course, know walking up and down your own stairs. You don't have to go out and buy a Nordic track. You can walk to your walk to your mailbox and back multiple times a day. Just get up and move. Mr. Cooper, my dog, helps me with that all the time. And then also eat. Make sure I am very guilty of not eating. I've worked on this since we've been talking, since we've been doing this. I do eat more in the morning. I always have hard-boiled eggs now available to me. I'm focusing on eating protein. You told us one week to mix your proteins, and that's a good way to do it. And then sleep, of course, we know sleep is so needed. Sleep is the natural healer. It's the most natural medicine you need to give your body time to rejuvenate, recuperate, heal overnight. And then
eating and moving, you're going to sleep better.
That's right. That's true. And then, of course, hydration. Oh, gosh, I've been working for years on hydration. And so I've tried different things about it. And, as you get older, you need it just for your regular skin, all kinds of reasons. So let's mesh this week, folks. Let's mesh. Let's really focus on these things. Michele, I want to say thank you. This was a very deliciously sciency episode. I want to invite anyone who's watching this or listening to this to please watch or listen a second time. What was covered in this episode affects every aspect of your life, and especially if you are overusing alcohol, all these things matter greatly. And if anything you heard here would be helpful for anyone else, we invite you to share this episode with someone else. And go ahead, get some Post-it notes, put them on your refrigerator, put them in your bathroom, wherever you need to remember some of the things that we discussed here today. And Michele, this was a long episode, but I wanted to go longer because we're talking about real life-saving stuff here. So thank you very, very much.
Yeah, thank you. It was a pleasure.
All right. I'll see you again next time.
See you next time.